Welcome to the Sent from Disneyland podcast.
Here age relives fond memories of the past.
If it's your first time joining us, welcome. On this episode, we'll take a journey into the past and explore Disneyland and Disneyland history with mementos, snapshots, and postcards sent from Disneyland from 1955 to the present. Today I'm starting off by thanking my patrons from patreon.com. You can join and receive mail from my desk or from my Disneyland trips. Special thanks to Random Olive, the first patron to this podcast, and to the e-ticket patrons Tania, Eric Daniels, Joe Gamble, Scott Booker, Monica Seitz Vega, Russ Romano, Michael and Christina Cross, Scott Cagle, and Sheila Harry. C-ticket patrons Serious Inquiries Only, Debbie Weinstein, Jennifer Schneep, Grace Coate, Brian Crawford, Ben and Noel Bruning, Patty Wolin, Angela Reynolds, Greg Gorley, and Aaron Moran. B-ticket patrons Jeff and Paige Orton, and Joshua, and Exorable Tosh Bell. And the A-ticket patrons Elise Sharp, Zealot Infinity, Alexis Robles, Maggie and Henry Byers, Angel DeBlois, and the All Aboard podcast. You can also sign up for my new newsletter for a chance to get some postcards delivered by the USPS to your mailbox. I am your host, your post-host Clocky, and today we have 2 postcards sent from Disneyland. The front of our first postcard has the Mark Twain at Cascade Peak. You can see 3 levels of the waterfall and guests enjoying a trip around the rivers of America. On the back it reads, "The Mark Twain steamboat passes Cascade Peak and its beautiful waterfalls, one of the newest additions to Frontierland, as it continues on a journey down the rivers of America." It's postmarked October 29, 1961, with a test and cancel and a 3-cent purple Liberty postage stamp. Scott number 1035. I assume they visit the park on Sunday, October 29, 1961, when park hours were from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. The weather was a high of 71 and a low of 52. Park attendance that day was 11,541. It's addressed to Ross, Gleason, and Groves of Washington, D.C. It reads, "Take all the adjectives and you still couldn't properly describe this place. Brought out the child in all of us. Henry." Sometimes it's challenging to find good postcards that tie in with the Imagineering episodes, but this week, the front and the back of the postcards lend themselves directly to this week's Imagineer. Frederick Edwin Jerger, known as Fred, was born on December 21st, 1913, in Pekin, Illinois. He attended the University of Illinois and graduated in 1937. He moved to Los Angeles with a dream of designing and building Hollywood sets, and began by working at the Warner Brothers Studios, building models. He was hired by Walt Disney to work on many different projects in 1953, including the Little Man Project, one of the first audio animatronics, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and Disneyland. Fred was one of the first few Imagineers, working with Harriet Burns, listen to her episode, Sent with Harriet Burns, episode 39, and Wathel Rogers, who you can hear about on episode 143, Sent with Wathel Rogers. Fred did work on a few other movies, including Darby O'Gill and the Little People and Mary Poppins, building miniature sets and props. Working in the model shop, Fred made models and 3-dimensional renderings of the Mark Twain, Main Street USA, and Sleeping Beauty Castle. Reading a story from E-Ticket magazine, it mentioned that Walt liked the design and colors that Fred chose, commenting that the blue roof blends into the sky and makes the castle seem taller. When Fred wasn't at the studio or Imagineering, he was working on Agua y Fuego, Water and Fire, a house that he built near Lakeview Terrace, just north of Covina. Not only did he work on this house, he would invite Imagineers and Disney studio artists to come and add flair to his home. Some of the pieces are direct copies from objects that he worked on the parks. Most notably was an oversized pot that can be seen on Fred's property and at Walt Disney World's version of Jungle Cruise. Bob Gurr mentioned in an article for E-Ticket magazine that Fred would throw parties on weekends and everyone would end up mixing concrete and stucco and sawing wood to help build the house. Great news, Enfield Post is back up on Etsy. Grabbing some vintage stamps is a great way to plus your mail, whether you're trying to match the color of your postcard or envelope or adding a themed stamp to the back of your mail. Be sure to check out Enfield Post. You can head over to enfieldpost.com and explore all the different vintage stamps you can use on your next card or letter. That's ENFIELDPOST on Instagram and enfieldpost.com for your wedding and vintage postage needs. Enfield Post is the official postage stamp sponsor of the Sent from Disneyland podcast. The front of our next postcard has a Jungle Cruise boat heading towards Schweitzer Falls and the backside of water. On the back it reads, Schweitzer Falls, Adventureland. An explorer's boat carries guests under beautiful Schweitzer Falls on a jungle cruise down the misty Amazon, the murky Mekong, the Belgian Congo, and through the swirling rapids of the Nile in Disneyland's Adventureland. It's postmarked March 31st, 1971, with a San Diego, March, Red Cross Month cancel, and a 6-cent flag over the White House postage stamp, Scott number 1338. I assume they visit the park on Saturday, March 27, 1971, when park hours were from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. The weather was a high of 67 and a low of 55. It's addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Robert Jainta of Boyne City, Michigan. It reads, 3:31. Dear Mom and Dad, we arrived an hour behind schedule due to a layover in Chicago. We had a beautiful flight, and we could see much of the scenery. Saturday, we drove to L.A. and saw much of Disneyland. You wouldn't believe the people out here, like clusters of ants. The scenery is like Florida, in with the palm trees, etc. But San Diego is very hilly and big, big, big. Tomorrow, we are going to see Gordy's ship, all for now, as we are going out by the pool to get some sun. Love, Joan and family, and Shirley. Fred was also known for raising his models up to give the perspective of riding the attraction. This was seen on Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color Tencennial episode. Walt and the camera walk through a raised model of Pirates of the Caribbean, where you can see the concept of the attraction from the perspective of the guest. Fred's ability to build miniatures helped out a lot when building the Storybook Land Canal attraction. It was noted that Walt even came by and would help building some of the miniature houses with Fred. While working on Disneyland, Fred was offered a plane that would take him from the Burbank Airport down to Orange County to save him from traveling from his house in Lakeview Terrace down to Anaheim. Fred didn't like how long it took and would often drive himself down. Walt suggested that he use the time to enjoy a cup of coffee and the newspaper and not fight the freeway traffic. Beyond the model shop, Fred would work hands-on with all the rock work around Disneyland. This included Schweitzer Falls and the elephant bathing pool on the Jungle Cruise, and many of the cave and rock formations around Tom Sawyer Island and the rivers of America. Fred retired from the company in 1979 after completing Big Thunder Mountain Railroad in Disneyland, but was brought back by Marty Sklar to work on Epcot and Tokyo Disneyland. He was honored in 2001 as a Disney legend and has windows on Main Street USA in Walt Disney World and Disneyland. In Walt Disney World, his window reads Daughterland Modeling Agency, making reference to all the daughters of Imagineers who would participate in summer internships in the model shop. In Disneyland, his window is just above the Carnation Cafe on Center Street, reading Decorative Fountains and Waterworks by Fred Jurger. Fred passed away on August 25, 2005, at the Motion Picture Television Country House and Hospital, at the age of 91. It's incredible to see his rock work still standing strong through all these years. This incoming postcard is sponsored by the Art Throwdown. Art Throwdown, or ATD, is an online craft hour on Instagram, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 Pacific. Be sure to check out Monday's ATD, which is usually hosted by paper artist Russ Romano. I've seen many amazing art projects, learned about awesome postmarks, postage stamp history, and a lot more on different episodes. It's great to stop in for an hour to watch someone craft or design something unique. Each host brings something a little different to each show. I'll list some of the regular hosts, or you can follow Russ Romano 2021 on Instagram. The front of my incoming postcard is lenticular, with Mickey and Minnie on a Jungle Cruise boat heading towards two elephants spraying water. On the top it reads, 41st Anniversary, April 15th, 2024. At the bottom it reads, Tokyo Disneyland. It's postmarked April 19th, 2024, with an Ichikawa cancel and two 63 yen postage stamps, one of some ornate buildings and another of two bowls filled with chilled desserts. It reads, Hello from Tokyo Disney Sea. I'm writing you from my room at the Hotel Miracosta. Tomorrow is the very last full day of a great trip to Japan. Love all the stationery and cute stamps here. All the best, Aaron, at ERNMRN. Thank you so much for the postcard, Aaron. Another perfect postcard for this episode. As Fred worked on Tokyo Disneyland, I also loved all the detail on this postcard. On the back, there's even a watermark mentioning the 41st anniversary of the park. And there is also an additional postmark done by Tokyo Disney Sea. It's a blue rubber stamp reading Fantasy Springs, Tokyo Disney Sea, and the date, 2024-4/18. Likely the day that this was put into one of the Tokyo Disney Sea mailboxes. I also enjoy that Tokyo Disneyland will produce postcards for odd-numbered years celebrating their park, this being their 41st anniversary and not a milestone like 40th, 45th, or 50th. Thanks for listening to Sent from Disneyland. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and tell your friends. It would be helpful to share your favorite episode to a friend or on social media. There are over 200 to choose from. It would also help to leave a 5-star rating and comment on whatever podcast platform you use. If you'd like to support the show financially, please check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/SentFromDisneyland. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Sent From Disneyland, or on Twitter at Sent From Disney. For questions and comments, send me a postcard addressed to Sent From Disneyland, P.O. Box 44, Hood, California, 95639. This podcast is not affiliated with Disney, the United States Postal Service, or any post office or Disney properties. Opinions expressed on this podcast belong to its host and guest of the Sent from Disneyland podcast.